So I'm just going to get right back into my reading of the 6 sentences from the book Race Matters by Cornel West. Cornel West says, the basic aim of black Muslim theology, with its distinct black supremacist account of the origin of white people, was to counter white supremacy. Now, according to Cornel West, and I want to emphasize that as strongly as I can, according to Cornel West, the basic aim of Elijah Muhammad and the black Muslim theology was to counter white supremacy, which they attempted to do by practicing a black supremacy. Now, I have already gone over the description of deconstruction as put forward by Derrida, that it is sometimes the putting into practice of a reversal in order to displace a conceptual order. If Elijah Muhammad was attempting to counter white supremacy by practicing a black supremacy, that is a reversal in order to displace a conceptual order. Therefore, it illustrates deconstruction. I do not say that it is deconstruction for a number of reasons. I say that it illustrates deconstruction, or that we read it as or with the help of deconstruction. If Elijah Muhammad is attempting to counter white supremacy, let us say if he is attempting to undo the white supremacist discourse by producing a black supremacist discourse, by opposing to it a black supremacist discourse, isn't he producing a discourse that is itself intended to be undone? In order for his discourse to be successful, it must share the same fate as the discourse that it was designed to counter. In order to counter white supremacy with black supremacy would have to suffer, but perhaps suffer is the wrong word. Black supremacy would have to undergo the same fate, the same effacement. According to Levinus, it is Macbeth that wishes the estate of the world undone in his own undoing. Elijah Muhammad produced a discourse that wants to be undone. Now, the question you might ask is, do you really think that Elijah Muhammad produced his entire project, did all that he did, said all that he said, so that it could be undone, refuted, and proven wrong? Well, I do think that Elijah Muhammad had a sense of this. I do think that he had a sense of how powerful the refutation of his discourse would be if it were refuted. On page 35 of this book, Elijah Muhammad says this: I don't only defy you, but I defy the scientists of this world to attack what I am teaching you and prove that I am teaching you something false, just because it is not of his world or knowledge. I will give any professor of the white man's world 10,000 and 10,000 times 10,000 to prove one word I teach you as untrue. Elijah Muhammad is inviting analysis. He is inviting criticism. He is inviting scientific and philosophic attempts to refute and disprove his discourse. Elijah Muhammad would lavish wealth on the individual that refutes his discourse, because he knows that the refutation of his discourse is the refutation of all supremacist discourses. So before I continue, let me ask this question. Much earlier in the book Race Matters, Cornel West puts forward the idea that race transcending is the ideal attitude to take toward race. Now, if a discourse puts forward the idea that race transcending, that race effacing is the ideal, wouldn't it be incumbent on that discourse to demonstrate an ability, a desire, a willingness to transcend and efface race? Why doesn't Cornel West take this opportunity to transcend race? Why doesn't he take this opportunity to efface race? Here's the sentence one more time, and keep in mind that this sentence comes well after the chapter in which Cornel West puts forward the idea that race transcending is the ideal attitude toward race. The basic aim of black Muslim theology, with its distinct black supremacist account of the origin of white people, was to counter white supremacy. Why doesn't Cornel West efface race? Why doesn't he transcend race and point out that Elijah Muhammad is practicing a supremacist discourse in order to counter a supremacist discourse? I have already gone over this, because that would mean treating Elijah Muhammad like a human being. It would be treating him as if he were meaningful, as if he had some sort of significance. It would be to give the speech spoken by blacks the same value as the speech spoken by whites. We know from reading the entire 6 sentences that Cornel West subordinates Elijah Muhammad's discourse to the white supremacist discourse. Elijah Muhammad's discourse is the imitation, the copy, the child. It is the product, the hate that hate produced. And by the way, what this subordination reveals is that Cornel West is practicing traditional metaphysics, that he is reaffirming, reestablishing, representing the traditional interpretation. There is no Derrida, there is no deconstruction in this text by Cornel West. Elijah Muhammad's supremacist discourse is designed to counter a supremacist discourse, but Cornel West wants us to think of it as the imitation, the copy, the child imitating the parent, the product, separate and not equal, black, of lesser value. And of course, I could go on. Elijah Muhammad's discourse imitates and opposes, yet, and I want to underline this phrase because I'll be coming right back to it, and yet it is understood as, that's the phrase, it is understood as a meaningless copy, the imitation, which has no value precisely because it is an imitation and not the original. Somewhere in Of Grammatology, Derrida says that something must be felt before allowing itself to be effaced. Elijah Muhammad attempts to counter a supremacist discourse by producing and practicing a supremacist discourse. Like Macbeth, he wants to undo the estate of the world with his own undoing. But before it can achieve its objective, before it can allow itself to be effaced, it must be felt. What I'm saying is this: Elijah Muhammad's project depends upon Elijah Muhammad being recognized as a human being, upon his being recognized as a thinking, feeling human being with a will of his own, a free will, upon his being recognized as a man in the world with the ability to act. Elijah Muhammad must be recognized as a human being living amid a human family, a human community that welcomes and cares for each other.